I guess. That might have been too base for YouTube. What a 7-minute intro. Maybe I can clip off that first 7 minutes and 30 seconds to keep me on YouTube another day. So click the links for Odyssey, Bit Chute, join the Telegram, or to support channel on Coffee. Someone in one of the Bit Chute videos goes, why should I support you on Coffee? It's like, I'm not twisting your arm, dude. I can't. You can or you can't. You don't have to. It's like, why would you give me a hard time? People ask for donations. Why would I support you? It's like, you could just not say that. You know what I'm saying? You could just be nice. It's like, you support if you want, or don't support if you don't want. It's like, why would you bring attention to the fact that you're choosing not to support? It's a little bit weird. You know, once you make videos, you realize, like, people can be dicks. And then I start thinking, like, oh, have I been a dick this whole time to other people making videos? Yes, I have. It's friggin' hysterical to think back and think, like, oh, God, I was such a douchebag. I didn't know it. I guess this is karma. I guess that's literally what it is. Funny. Okay, so this video is fun because it's such a, like, dancing around on landmines, and I'm just gonna run through the landmine field. I don't care about YouTube anymore. I mean, it's fun while it lasts, and it was fun while it lasted, but whatever. It raises a lot of tricky issues about genetic ethnicity versus tribal associations, and also self-identity, which is very topical and just super tricksy. For a lot of people who are trying to maintain, it's easier when you're not politically correct, because you can just kind of see things as they are and just talk about them, and you can kind of judge how far you're outside the realm of political correctness by people's reaction. If they just, like, the eyebrows go up and they go, oh, you're not supposed to say that, but I'm glad you are saying it. You know, it's like everyone needs somebody who can be not politically correct so they can say what everyone else is thinking. First of all, the whole thing is silly. It's deck chairs on the Titanic, because modern comics are cancer, and Hollywood is also cancer. It seems Hollywood seems to be having a slow recovery for some reason. I know the Spider-Man was huge, but other than that, there was a lot of stuff that just really underperformed, or the curve to crossing over into profitability. It's like, oh, this is going to take 2 years before it's profitable. Maybe movies are just going to shift to streaming. You're going to need to, like, dial. No, you can't. No, there's no more $200 million films if you're doing streaming. It's like you're going to have to set those expectations down to like $50 million. And it's like, oh God, it's impossible to make a $50 million movie. It's like, no, I think you could do it. That's what, there's a lot of low budget computer tech out there, and there's also such a thing as building a set and then acting on the set, using words and facial expressions to convey emotion and tension, and using music. It's like, I think you could do that for $50 million. It doesn't have to all be green screen and everything green screen sets. It's like, you could build someone was talking about the Star Trek Part 4 is coming out. It's like, they go, this is $200 million movie, so it's kind of tricky nowadays. It's like they announced Part 4, and it's like nobody knew that they were even going to make the movie, and people are going like, yeah, you can't do it for less than $200 million. They're like, well, you can build the bridge of a spaceship like they did for the original Star Trek, and then a couple other sets, and then you use acting and storytelling, and you can do that for less than $200 million, quite a bit less, because they did that on the original Star Trek. Anyway, so the thing is with movies in the current environment, health issue, nobody wants to sit next to the next Typhoid Mary for 90 minutes, wearing an N95 type of thing. What happens is, if you're in a theater and somebody coughs, is it a big deal? I don't know. I mean, I haven't gone back to the theater yet, and I wasn't really thinking about it. Now I think about it, like, oh yeah, I guess I'm not going back to a theater probably ever again, which is interesting. You just kind of close that chapter in your life, like, yeah, no more theaters for me. So Hollywood feels over. At least it feels over for me, because anytime they announce something, I realize, like, oh, it's just going to be woke. It's going to be some woke garbage that I'm not interested in. And as it turns out, a lot of other people are feeling that way also. So they're talking about swapping characters in stories versus actors and that kind of thing. But you got to keep in mind, European characters are blackwashed nonstop. There's people, you can Google it, or not Google it, DuckDuckGo search it, or Yandex search it, which is the Russian search engine, which is delightfully unpolitically correct in many regards. You can find... I was looking for those glow ninjas in the memes, in the trees meme for the thumbnails and stuff, and you search Google for that Glow Ninja, and you get one result, and then DuckDuckGo gets a little bit more, and then Yandex is like, it gives you everything. It's like, oh, why not just make the internet search engine unbiased? Or if you're going to be biased, why not tell the searcher that these results are biased? It seems a bit dishonest when you don't admit that you're manipulating the search engine. Anyway, so you can look up like what characters were blackwashed for stories, comics, movies, whatever. And it turns out like, there's hundreds of them. It's specifically, if you have a red-haired character, which is, the most rare, the European red-haired character is the most rare person on Earth. They're the ultra minority. Red-haired, blue-eyed is the most rare human being on Earth, and then you've got red-hair, green-eyed, then blonde hair, blue-eyed or green-eyed, and then the rest of us who are somewhere below the peak racial hierarchy. Maybe like all the light-eyed people can crap on the hazel-eyed people, and then all the hazel-eyed people can crap on the dark-eyed people, I guess. When I was growing up, blue eyes were a big thing. Anyway, so keep in mind that, European characters, they're swapped out all the time. It's like people are absolutely, well, I won't say people are okay with it because people are starting to talk about it now. It's kind of weird. But, Hollywood's run by people who Epstein kids and Weinstein women. So, kind of, you take what you get with Hollywood. And the thing is with characters is that money talks. If you make a character Irish, Jew, Arab, whatever, and somebody wants to blackwash it and they pay you money for it, most people just don't care about the character that much. They're not, they've been living with these characters for years or decades. It's not, and they've probably moved on to other characters. It's not like they're not that tied into the characters people seem to think. Most people just don't care about the character that much, or they don't own the rights anyway, and they care more about the money. It's like, okay, we want to do this. We want to wash out this character for you. We're going to make them Nigerian or something for the show, but here's $227,000. Can we do this? Can we make a streaming show with your character? And like, yeah, it's fine. It's like it's a renovation to the house or something. Next issue is what exactly Isaac is versus how he identifies. So the issue that confuses people is you're dealing with an ethno-religion or a tribe. So it literally has an identified genetic compound clustered around three main branches, which already tells you that there's already a lot of genetic drift for those three. I forget the names of them, but you can look it up. People seem to only think of it as a religion, sort of, but imagine it this way. If you take a group clustered around an ideology with very strong in-group preferences, there's going to be a lot of close breeding, which is not good in the genetic sense, but it keeps the clan together and it keeps resources in-house, which is why different tribes have done it over the years. But there's always going to be genetic drift. People marry into a tribe and they convert, or they have some, magical way to convert it. It's like, a lot of this stuff is, it's religion. It is what it is. But it's introducing new DNA into the tribe. But as long as outgroup DNA influx is small, the tribe remains clustered around one genetic code. It's very identifiable. But as tribes travel and they get isolated, you can map genetics across continents by impassable rivers, and challenging mountains. It's like that's how people get clustered, because they just don't want to go over a mountain. The code starts to diverge and form new clusters, but right now it's still it's testable and quantifiable, though in the current age there's much more outgroup marriage. So the cluster, the penumbra, starts to spread out, or the genetic diversity of the group starts to get larger and larger. And eventually, who knows what will happen. The other side of the ledger is people who convert to usually going to be Islam or Christianity, and then they raise their kids as such, but they're still ethnically the original source code. And it's rare, but it does happen. The kids might marry out or in, and then, whatever happens with them. And the thing is, even if they do convert to another religion, they still might. You never know. It's weird how people behave, knowing that they have this kind of history and they want to maintain it. The thing is, you might have a cluster of ethnically one thing, but they might identify as Muslims. They might be religiously Muslims, but ethnically it's like their DNA says something else. Especially in the Middle East, as groups get isolated and convert, or in some cases they have to convert for their own safety, but they're still marrying into the in-group. Or you can go the other way with groups that maintain the religious tribalism but marry outside DNA. So you end up with blonde-haired, blue-eyed types somewhere who look a bit out of place, or even their Jewish African tribes. It's just how religion tends to flow. Or it's like all it takes is one person to go into a village and really fire people up on the idea and like mass convert people. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's all it takes. And it's interesting because the cultural norms of, 4,000 years ago are so different from modern norms that the tribalism is trying to catch up to modern political correctness. It's an equation that can't balance. You have an increasing tough time justifying some of the beliefs. So there's a conflict with liberalism versus orthodox, and at what point the liberalism gets so liberal that the liberal interpretation becomes kind of absurd. I will say with the New Testament, that can kind of, it doesn't seem like it's so out of whack with a modern life. It's if you've never read the New Testament, you should read it. It's weird to read it. You can read it as an atheist or as an agnostic or a deist, wherever you want to be, and you read it and you kind of think like, there's something here. You can read it even as a scientist. You're like, there's something going on here that I don't understand. I mean, maybe the best passage is to see through a glass darkly and just, it's like, there's something here that's, I am not going to ever be able to understand, but I do feel that there's something to it. Then you have offshoots of all religious books that don't have wide acceptance. I think that's called the Gnostic books. No, that's Gnosticism, but there's other books that, it's like, how do you get a book accepted into the greater collection of literature? It's like, well, people just vote on it or decide on it or kill each other over it. It's like, yeah, that's how collection of literatures that form the foundations of a religion work, usually at the end of a spear. The thing is, back in the day, you just invaded and you slaughtered the men and kids and you raped the women. And it's not just the Abrahamic religions that did that. All humans everywhere did that. Except maybe there's that Indian sect. There's a couple Indian sects that value life. And now the term has slipped past me. I could pause the video and look it up, but I'll leave it for you in the comments to clue me into that. I don't even know if it's the Indian sect. It's, oh God, the word is right on the tip of my tongue. It's the group that very much values life, and I just cannot reach for it. It's weird. You try to do things under pressure and you realize it's like just about impossible to reach for those words. Anyway, thing is, you can't do a lot of this stuff in modern day. So, I mean, you can't just delete people who've got a different branch of Christianity or something to you. So what do you do with the branches of the Abrahamic religions that still refer to themselves as the true Jews, Christians, Muslims? Well, there's not much you can do about it because religion is, after all, a matter of faith. If someone wants to practice, Madonna wants to practice, I think, some esoteric Kabbalah. And what was that movie, Get Him to the Greek? They were talking about that. That was a hysterical movie. If she wants to practice some esoteric Kabbalah, that was like popular, I don't know, a few years ago, a few decades ago, maybe it was 20 years ago or something, where people were Hollywood types were getting into that. And if she says, oh, well, I'm practicing Kabbalah and I'm the true path to enlightenment, you can't really stop her. I mean, after all, maybe she got a message from God, which is like, that seems to be kind of the deus ex machina when you paint yourself in a corner with religion. It's like, oh, I actually got a message from God. Hey, it's cool. Told me to do this. It's like, okay, well, I mean, 2,000 years ago, you'd settle it at the end of a spear, but you just can't do that nowadays. I mean, now you have to go to a courthouse, and you can't do that with religion. And when it comes down to it, there's no way to tell. Modern religion is less burning bush and more limited liability companies, religion incorporated. And I know that kind of sounds cynical. It's not. It's like you're taking something old-fashioned and you're trying to overlay it on the modern world, and it has a challenging time to adjust. Maybe someone can create a religion for the modern time, a modern, I don't know, what old Greek pantheon or Norse pantheon would you want to bring to the forefront? Well, I don't know. You could Jupiter or something, like those old type of things would be kind of fun. I mean, the sculpture was much better with the Greeks anyway. The thing is, with a diffuse tribe that is attached to a religion, you get people who pick and choose from it. I mean, there's hundreds of books that make up the foundations of these religions. Like, you're just aware of the pinnacle books, but there's a lot that goes into it. It's like, does everyone agree on every? I mean, if you want to see people fight, get a bunch of rabbis in a room together and have them discuss religion. They would resort to violence if you didn't have pepper spray handy. And so if someone says they're one thing because they identify as such, well, who's to say differently? If you've got some tribe in remote Africa who gets a book and their kids follow the book, well, they are that thing, and you can't really say, oh, no, you're not this thing. It's like, why not? Just because we're African, we can't worship this religion? It's like, we have the literature. We follow the literature. It's like, oh, but you don't look like us. It's like, yeah, but it's the ideology in the literature. It's like, we are this thing. The kids are the thing. It's like, you are the thing until you're not the thing, I guess. So anyway, looking at Isaac, who is part ethnically Jewish, you can look up his ethnicity online, but I assume does not practice. He's probably an atheist. How do you classify him? You're better off having him self-identify, or we can just always mind our own business. Can he play Moon Knight or not? Well, yeah, he looks Mediterranean or Middle Eastern, so yeah, he kind of vaguely fits the character. Does he actually have to practice Kabbalah and perform ancient rituals? Ultimately, it depends on who. Disney owns the rights to the property. Things get weirder when you have something like a red-haired, green-eyed Irish girl played by a Mediterranean or an African, someone who just clearly does not fit. It looks radically different. It doesn't make sense unless you're in Hollywood, which is made up of a bunch of anti-white misandrist weirdos. It's like, are they really anti-white misandrists? Yes, but it's also a question of, like, there's people who just want to watch the world burn, and that's kind of what Hollywood is. It's like they're those people, like the media and the government has their foot floorboarded, and then Hollywood comes along with pure oxygen into the intake manifold just to get that thing headed to midnight, I guess, which Hollywood's it's also an echo chamber of a lot of people who are chemically enhanced, sort of thing. So you got if you've got what if you had an ethnically Jewish actor who's like born to a Jewish mother, but he converts to Christianity, but he looks like the role. He's got dark hair, dark eyes. He fits the role. It's like, oh, well, you can't play the role of Moon Knight because you converted to Christianity. It's like, it just gets silly after a while, which is like a lot of this gets serious. It's like, aren't you hypocritical? Because you're saying like Africans can't replace the Irish, blonde hair, the red-haired Scottish girls or whatnot. It's like, they don't even look the same. I mean, they obviously don't look the same. It's like, Hollywood's not doing it. If they were doing it for quote unquote diversity, you'd have more Mexican representation, because the country is rapidly becoming a Mexican majority, and they don't see themselves represented on camera because they're not as politically useful to these Hollywood puppets. You'd see more Chinese representatives. Most of the world is Chinese or Indian. It's like, why don't you see them in Hollywood? Especially in Hollywood, selling to a Chinese market. It's like, you'd think you'd have more Chinese. It's like, no, they're just using Africans. It's part of a humiliation ritual, and there's a lot of other issues to it than that, but that's probably a good approach from 30,000 feet. They have a picture of him. I don't even remember his name. A lot of their images that Bounding Into Comics uses, for some reason, are really dark. It's like, you got to run that through a quick little free photo editor, and you boost the gamma to. And then there's also like, you want to balance the photos across themselves. But it is a small website, so do what they do. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.